Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into the world of billionaires?
Uh,
We're cracking open Elon Musk's Billionaire School today.
yeah, it's a pretty interesting read, actually.
It's satirical, for
Oh,
sure,
oh yeah,
but it also offers some genuinely insightful glimpses into how these tech giants think and operate.
it's like a tongue-in-cheek guide to reaching billionaire status,
Exactly.
and it uses Elon Musk as kind of the prime example, but it also brings in other figures like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg,
So we'll uncover some of their strategies and thought process.
and maybe even get a glimpse into the future they're building.
I like that. A glimpse
Oh,
into the future they're building. Well, the book jumps right in with Elon Musk's early drive.
oh yeah.
He wanted to be a millionaire at 4 years old.
Wow.
Sold his first video game at 12.
It makes you wonder if that kind of ambition is something you're born with,
Right.
or if it develops over time.
Nature versus nurture.
Exactly. But like in the context of groundbreaking entrepreneurship. Right. And the book really emphasizes this idea of maximizing every second.
Like that whole hustle mentality.
Yeah. It even mentions Musk trying to optimize things like bathroom breaks
Oh, wow.
and wishing he could just skip meals to work more.
That's intense.
It is.
That work ethic is a recurring theme, though.
Yeah.
Not just with Musk, but with many successful entrepreneurs.
I think it's almost like a baseline requirement at that level.
You have to be willing to put in the time, for sure.
Absolutely. But then you have those stories like Musk disguising his PC as a supercomputer to impress early investors.
That's hilarious. It's not just about hard work then.
Right.
It's about showmanship, too.
A little bit of smoke and mirrors.
Exactly.
Creating that perception of advanced technology.
Even if the reality is a little more DIY.
Right. So from that always be hustling mindset,
Mm-hmm.
the book shifts gears a bit to the dropout advantage.
Ah, yes, the billionaire college dropout trend.
Gates, Zuckerberg, Jobs, Musk, the list goes on and on.
There's even a statistic, and we should take this with a grain of salt,
Okay.
but it says that Harvard dropouts statistically earn more than graduates.
Because of Gates and Zuckerberg.
Exactly. It's that outlier effect
Makes you wonder if there's something about traditional education,
that maybe stifles innovation,
or is it just that these individuals are willing to take risks?
forge their own paths, yeah. What do you think?
I think a little of both. How about you?
It's a tough one.
It is.
But, the book's take on this is pretty funny. It basically suggests anyone with a degree should just burn their transcripts,
Really?
pretend they never went to college.
That's pretty extreme.
It is, but it highlights that maybe there's more to success than just following the traditional path.
I like that. Joking aside, though, there's this undeniable link between Silicon Valley and science fiction.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with Musk.
Yeah, he seems obsessed with it. I mean, he named SpaceX drone ships after spaceships from Ian M. Banks's novels.
And he's looked into whether Star Wars ray guns could actually work. It's amazing.
That's incredible. And then you have Bezos hiring William Shatner for a Blue Origin flight.
It's like they're pulling ideas straight from sci-fi.
So is it just about being inspired by these imaginative worlds?
Or are they using science fiction as a roadmap for the future they want to create?
Ooh, I like that.
It's definitely about envisioning possibilities beyond the present.
That's for sure. And science fiction does that so well.
It pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible.
And that kind of thinking, it really breeds innovation.
Definitely.
Speaking of pushing boundaries, this obsession with sci-fi seems to tie into Musk's early interest in space travel.
Oh, yeah. And we're not talking about just looking at stars here.
No, we're talking about wanting to send mice to Mars as a starting point.
It's like even as a young entrepreneur, he was thinking big. He wanted to make a giant leap, not just incremental progress,
And then there's that story about him trying to buy ICBMs in Moscow,
to launch his own mission.
even bringing a concerned friend along for the ride.
It just shows that willingness to entertain wild ideas.
And see potential where others see obstacles.
Exactly.
It's almost like a key ingredient in the billionaire playbook.
Yeah.
Promise big.
And deliver, eventually.
Yeah. Musk is known for those ambitious timelines for his tech. Full self-driving, robotaxis, Mars colonization.
Definitely. There's a tension there, though, isn't
Oh,
there?
absolutely. On the one hand, it generates so much excitement and attracts investment.
But then on the other, there's always the risk of disappointment.
If those timelines aren't met.
Right. It's like walking a tightrope.
Between vision and reality.
Exactly.
But there's also this element of creating a narrative of progress, right? Like the book talks about Musk's vision of this interconnected Tesla ecosystem.
Solar roofs, power walls, vehicles. all working together.
Seamlessly. And it reminds me of Bezos with his Amazon ecosystem.
Or Zuckerberg's strategy of acquiring multiple brands.
It's all about dominating a market by controlling all the key pieces.
Like building an empire.
Yeah. And that's where the book gets into this alpha dog mentality.
Like, they see the business world as a pack, and there can only be one leader.
There can only be one at the top.
Right. The book even mentions Musk's need to be alpha in his personal life, too.
Really? Like how?
There's this anecdote about him constantly asking his first wife to dye her hair lighter.
Lighter?
Yeah, lighter and lighter shades of blonde.
Because he preferred it that way.
Yeah. And then you have Bezos and Zuckerberg both choosing alpha dogs.
Like specific breeds.
Yeah, pedigree breeds, and Bezos even got a robot dog.
Oh, wow. It's almost like they're projecting their own dominance onto their pets.
It's a fascinating thought, right? But beyond those little quirks, it makes you wonder about how these individuals approach power dynamics.
Even in areas of their lives that seem totally unrelated to business.
Exactly.
So from alpha dogs, the book takes a pretty sharp turn into the financial strategies these billionaires use.
Oh, yeah?
Specifically, this tax strategy called buy, borrow, die.
Have you heard of this one?
I've heard of it, but I don't fully understand it.
So basically, it's a way to minimize taxes by living off loans that are secured by your assets.
Okay.
And then you pass those assets on to your heirs, largely tax-free.
So it's all about minimizing the tax burden when passing on wealth.
Exactly. And the book points out that many billionaires have used this strategy, including Musk, Bezos, Ellison, Buffett, and Soros.
Wow, that's a pretty big list of names.
It's perfectly legal, but it does raise questions about fairness in the tax system.
Especially when you consider that these individuals end up paying a much lower effective tax rate than the average person.
Right. And of course, Musk is very vocal about his opposition to a wealth tax.
He believes that billionaires are better at allocating capital than the government.
That's his argument, yeah. So you've got this clash of ideologies, right? Individual wealth accumulation versus societal good.
Definitely a hot button issue.
It is. And one that's likely to continue as wealth inequality becomes more and more of a pressing issue.
Exactly. But here's where things take a really interesting turn. The book actually frames billionaires as potential saviors of humanity.
From existential threats.
Yeah, it's almost like they see themselves as stepping in to solve the problems that governments and institutions have failed to address.
Like superheroes.
Right. Musk, for instance, has shifted his focus to different threats over the years. AI, climate change, falling birth rates. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's definitely a provocative idea.
It is.
It plays into this narrative that they have the resources and the ingenuity to solve the world's biggest problems.
Right. But it also begs the question, do these billionaires actually have humanity's best interests at heart?
Or are they driven by their own ambitions and agendas?
That's a great question, and one we'll have to keep exploring as we dive deeper into Elon Musk's billionaire school. But for now, we'll leave you with that thought.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Elon Musk's billionaire school.
Before the break, we were talking about billionaires as potential saviors.
Right, and that whole idea of existential threats.
Yeah, pretty heavy stuff. But the book also dives into some of the more, shall we say, down-to-earth aspects of billionaire life.
Like how they spend their money.
Exactly. Private jets, mega mansions, even entire islands.
The world of extravagance and excess.
It's hard to even fathom that level of wealth.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that the book notes how some billionaires, like Musk, are actually downsizing their material possessions.
Really? Like getting rid of stuff?
It seems so.
Mm-hmm.
He even said that owning too much made him a target.
So is that a genuine change of heart?
Or just a PR move to seem more relatable.
Right, because let's be honest, even if they sell a few mansions, they're still billionaires.
It does suggest a growing awareness of the optics of extreme wealth, though.
That's true.
And then the book takes us into this whole other world. Family offices.
Family offices.
Yep, they're basically private companies set up to manage the fortunes of the ultra-wealthy.
Like a personal team of financial advisors.
It's way more than that. These offices operate with a level of secrecy and minimal regulation that's pretty mind-blowing.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
It does, right?
And these offices, they manage massive amounts of wealth.
Oh, yeah. Often surpassing hedge funds in terms of financial power.
It's like a hidden layer of the financial system.
That most people have no idea even exists.
And a perfect example of that is this buy, borrow, die strategy that we touched on earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Can you explain that a little more?
So basically, it allows the ultra-wealthy to live off loans secured by their assets.
Okay.
And then they pass those assets on to their heirs, mostly tax-free.
It's like a way to sidestep the estate tax.
Essentially, yeah.
Oh.
And as we mentioned, the book highlights that this strategy has been used by many high-profile billionaires.
Including Musk, Bezos, and a bunch of others.
Right. And while it's perfectly legal, it definitely raises questions about the fairness of the tax system for everyone else.
Right, because the average person doesn't have access to these kinds of strategies.
Exactly. It all ties back into that debate about wealth inequality that we talked about earlier.
And Musk's opposition to a wealth tax.
Yeah. He argues that billionaires are better at allocating capital than the government.
But it's a complicated issue with no easy answers.
For sure. It's something that we as a society need to keep discussing.
Absolutely. And speaking of wealth, the book also touches on what happens to those massive fortunes when the billionaires who built them are gone.
Right. What happens to all that money?
Some pass it on to their heirs, often using complex legal structures to minimize taxes.
And others pledge to donate most of their wealth to philanthropy.
Like Gates, Buffett, and Bezos.
Yeah. They've committed to giving away billions to various causes.
It's almost like a modern-day version of the robber baron era.
Where industrialists amassed huge fortunes and then tried to redeem themselves through charitable giving.
Right. But does it really make up for the way that wealth was accumulated in the first place?
That's a tough question.
It is, and it brings us back to this idea of billionaires as potential saviors.
That we talked about before.
We were discussing Musk's focus on addressing existential threats.
Like AI, climate change, and the declining birth rate.
Yeah. Do you think those efforts are a genuine desire to make a difference?
I think it's hard to know for sure. On the one hand, these individuals do have incredible resources.
And the brainpower to tackle huge problems.
Right. But are their solutions always the best ones?
Like Musk's push for colonizing Mars, for example.
Some people see that as a distraction from addressing problems here on Earth.
It's a bold vision, but is it the right one?
And then there are the ethical implications of terraforming another planet.
Right, it's not a simple issue.
It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of technological advancement.
Yeah, but we need to think about the long-term consequences.
And make sure these solutions are implemented ethically and responsibly.
I think it all comes down to this question. Do we trust these billionaires to have humanity's best interests at heart?
Or are they driven by their own agendas?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It's a debate that will likely continue for a long time.
For sure. You know, it's funny. We've been talking about this idea of billionaires as potential saviors.
Right.
But Elon Musk's billionaire school also kind of throws out this concept that maybe becoming a billionaire is more achievable.
More attainable.
Yeah, than we think.
Right.
It lays out these steps almost like a recipe for reaching that level of wealth.
I mean, there's definitely some satire there.
For sure.
It's poking fun at that whole self-help genre.
Right.
The idea that anyone can become a billionaire if they just follow the right formula.
Yeah. Follow the steps. Buy this book.
Right. Exactly.
But that also makes you think, right, about the stories we tell ourselves about wealth and success.
Definitely. Like, are these billionaires really self-made?
Right.
Or did they benefit from certain advantages?
Like, were they just lucky?
We talked about Musk's early hustle, but he also came from a pretty privileged background.
Yeah, he did.
So what about someone who doesn't have that same starting point?
Right. Can anyone really achieve this level of success?
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
And the book grapples with that complexity.
It does.
It encourages us to look beyond the surface and consider the systemic factors that contribute to wealth inequality.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just working hard.
Right. It's about access to resources and opportunities.
Being in the right place at the right time.
Exactly.
So yeah, it definitely challenges some of those classic narratives, like the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps idea.
Right.
But even with all that complexity, the book ends on a surprisingly light note.
Oh yeah, that last lesson. Let the simulation know, you know.
Right. What do you think about that?
It's a fun way to wrap things up.
It is.
A nod to that simulation argument that we talked about.
Like maybe we're all living in a computer-generated reality.
And the book suggests we try to signal to the creators that we're onto them.
It's kind of like a giant cosmic game of hide and seek.
I love that analogy.
It's fun to think about.
It is. It's a humorous take on a serious philosophical question.
Right.
But it also highlights this audacity that's so prevalent in Silicon Valley.
Even if we are in a simulated world.
Like, we still have the power to think for ourselves, to question things.
To maybe even influence our reality.
Exactly. We're not just passive players.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Elon Musk's billionaire school, I'm left with this sense of wonder.
Yeah, it's a thought-provoking book for sure.
It really is. We've covered so much: ambition, innovation, extravagance, the potential for billionaires to save humanity, even the possibility that we're all just living in a simulation.
It's a lot to unpack.
But it's been a fascinating journey. What are your final takeaways?
For me, it's really about questioning the narratives we often hear about wealth and success,
Right.
and remembering that the future isn't predetermined. We have a role to play in shaping it.
Absolutely. The choices these billionaires make, the technologies they develop, the way we respond to their influence, it all matters.
It does. So let's stay informed, let's keep asking questions, and let's engage in these important conversations.
That's the key takeaway. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Elon Musk's Billionaire School.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep those questions coming.